Here goes nothing. My story begins with my AP, who also happens to be my ex. We dated for 3 years, during which we had an unbreakable bond, or so I thought. It was our lovely teenage times. We used to go out often. During one time, he ended up cheating on me. We argued about this when he verbally abused, bullied me in front of our friends. It baffled me because he wasn't that kind of person. I broke up with him and began to work on myself. I wasn't attracted to any other guys except for one who was a Yemeni refugee. He lost his family in Yemen, came across here running and working at a cafe to make ends. Even after so many years, he's triggered with the horrors of the war and unrest. At first, he was a normal guy, but when you take a closer look, there's something deep and mysterious about him. He loved history, so did I. There was this unique charm about him. We began to talk and hung out as friends when he asked me out one day. Our first date went a complete disaster, but the following ones were a clip from a Hollywood movie. My parents didn't like him because he's a Muslim. Our cultures didn't match, so didn't our ideas. My dad used to verbally abuse him, and he just listened to him because of me. Looking back now, I was as much as abusive as my dad. I yelled at him and pushed him to his limits to do better, because somehow I had this idea if he did well, my dad will actually like him. I was dead wrong. Few years later, we get married and have 2 babies, live the life we always wanted with a cozy home and daydream love. We get pregnant with our 3rd child, but unfortunately, I had a miscarriage. It was harsh for both of us. He shut down completely after vetting depressed over it. I was none the wiser. I began to evaluate my whole life up until that point and began to question everything about it. It was the beginning of my selfish trait because I quit my job to become a full-time mom. Even after that, something felt missing. I then ran into my ex one day. It was completely unintentional. He was doing good for himself. He changed so much that I was actually happy for him. We connected as friends by making small talks here and there. Our old emotions resurfaced when we met again. It was a planned meet at our coffee spot. We started hanging out often by then, and 4 months later, we moved to bedroom phase. My husband works long hours, so we were doing it often at his place, my place when the kids were out in hotels. I went from a loyal wife to a complete shameless woman with no conscience at this point. COVID pandemic put me in a place I wasn't ready for. I was craving for AP during the lockdown. I didn't realize my husband was exhausted at this point from work. I do now. My intimacy with AP was restored during October of 2020. That lasted until December when he found out. Aftermath, he moved to a different room. He refuses to talk to me and is strong on divorce after 6 months. Pandemic drained us out. He's now working 2 jobs to provide for us and save money for divorce. We slept together recently, my last post. But after that, he's gotten more rough. He won't talk to me, and if he does, it's loud. He doesn't want to see me. I'm completely in NC with my parents after they made it clear they want me to divorce my husband. I'm trying to listen and give him space, which he requires. Today, he asked me about the money that he spent on my dad's medical expenses. I told him it was not right to ask for it. He replied it was also wrong of my dad to demean him every time he went to my parents, even in front of our kids. I told him that I will pay all the money my dad owes to him in our divorce. He said, I don't work now, how can I do it? He then asked me if I had any more jobs, like spreading my legs again to someone for money. I froze there. It hurt me. I know I screwed it up, but to say something so cheap like this. I went to our bedroom after that. I told him I will take up a job to pay him the money back. Note, please don't judge me. My children's lives depends on our marriage. It was hard for me to type it out. Looking back, I was nothing but abusive to my husband. I plan on changing that and stop our divorce. We have to be separated first before filing for divorce. It's a long process. My husband is in this stage where he questions everything because I destroyed that everything for him. He built a life revolving around us, only for me to destroy it. Edit, I want to change for everything and everyone who lie ahead in my life. Most of all, it's my husband for whom I want to change. I'm slowly accepting that we are over. It is a nightmare. I still wish to fight about it, but it'll drift us apart. My father works a part-time job and collects pension from a job he was on before. That's how he makes his ends. He won't be able to pay that kind of money. My husband is changing for worse. He's becoming more aggressive. He won't hurt, but he's the one hurting. Let your husband move on, OP. Your affair was simply too intricate for your husband to ever get over it. If it was a one-time thing, or even a once-twice thing, sure, it's reasonable to have a glimmer of hope somewhere that he might get over it, for the sake of the kids at least. But your affair is not something that a reasonable man can really get over. I think staying together would actually be quite toxic for your children. His impression of you will never be restored. In his eyes, you're no longer the holy mother of his kids. It's going to get increasingly abusive. So it's better to move on. For all of you, comments. Please do change, but do it for yourself, for your children, for your future partner. Recognizing that you were abusive is a good start. Work on becoming a safe partner and a better person. Don't invalidate your husband further by continuing to ignore his wants and needs. He wants a divorce. Accept that. Let it be an amicable one. Give him space and work on cultivating a healthy co-parenting relationship. As for your father, he was vile to your husband but had no problem taking money off him? Your husband came to your country with nothing and built a life and a family. He made enough to help those who didn't deserve it. It's absolutely reasonable for your husband to want that money back. Yeah, that's hard. I think your husband needs acknowledgement. He feels exploited and abused by your family. He came as a refugee and wanted just a better life and got this instead. Give him what he wants and needs. You have to take accountability. Your husband even paid for your father's medical expenses, though your father only abused him. Don't stall your husband. Your father's expenses have nothing to do with you. They are your father's responsibility. Get your life in order and get a job. Stop being a burden, story 2 Hi all. This is my first post here and I'm looking to A. Let out some feelings by telling my story Bawad. Get some anonymous advice. My wife of 15 years carried on an affair for 2.5 years with a coworker. When I met my wife, she had been divorced from her first husband for a few years. They had a daughter together, but he wasn't in the picture much, so I basically became her father. Once my stepdaughter got older, I wanted to have a child of my own, so I discussed it with my wife. Her tubes had been tied for years, and she agreed to have them untied so that we could try and have a child together. We went through several pregnancies and miscarriages before she finally became pregnant with our daughter. Shortly after our daughter was born, I was forced to work nights, which meant my wife was basically a single parent. I will admit that I have not been a great father, but I have been there when I could be and love my wife and daughter. About 5 years ago, my wife got her dream job that she really loved. Roughly 2.5 years ago, I found some things on her Snapchat and confronted her about them. She confessed she had been chatting with a coworker and that they had kissed on 2 occasions. A few months later, I found some text messages where they had been meeting for lunch, but my wife swore to me that was all they were doing and nothing had been happening. All seemed fine until a few months ago when she started acting distant towards me. She wasn't interested in sex at all, and I basically had to beg her to do it with me. 3 weeks ago, I confronted her about it, and she confessed to a sexual affair which had lasted 2.5 years. She said she was in love with both of us, but she did not want to lose her family. That night, I gave her an ultimatum that she could have no contact with her lover. We discussed some of all she had done, the sneaking around an apartment complex, parking lots, hotels, and finally a climate-controlled storage unit that had a bed. She told me they were amazing together in bed and that she does love him. That was tough to hear, but I told her I wanted the truth. She sent her lover a text ending it that night, and she agreed to get on Life 360 with me. We have started counseling together, but I don't know if that is the best option. She has been extremely sad over hurting her lover and cries a lot. I don't feel as if I can ever trust her again, but I don't want my daughter to grow up in a broken home. Her reasoning for cheating that came out in our first counseling session was that I have taken her for granted for several years, and she became angry with me. Plus, in the first counseling session, she talked about her strong feelings for her lover. She swears she has had no contact with him since that night, but given how she talks about him, I don't know if I believe her. Edit. First off, I truly appreciate all of the kind comments filled with advice. I have learned a lot from everything you have posted. Also, thanks for all the DMs with the helpful links. My wife and I are still trying to work things out. I do not want to break up my family. From watching her on Life 360, she is being truthful with me as to where she is at all times. She wants to make our marriage and family work. Yes, there is a part of me that wants to divorce her, especially when I think of all the things she has done with her AP. I simply have to put this out of my mind and move forward for my own sanity. It sounds like it's time to let go. I doubt she'll maintain no contact forever, especially with how emotionally invested she is in the affair. The length of the affair makes it incredibly difficult for you to heal, and it's clear that your home is already broken. You don't deserve any of this pain. Let her go and live her fantasy life with her lover. See how fast that world crumbles around her feet. She's too deep in affair fog. You can use it to your advantage. She's just another person searching for fulfillment in all the wrong places, and she won't find it. Cut ties with her, move forward, and focus on seeking out healthier and happier times for yourself. Be the best parent you can be to your child. Remember, she's not choosing you, she's choosing her child. It's better to be an excellent parent 50% of the time than to endure an awful relationship 100% of the time.